Welcome to Despicable Maine Deep Dive Podcast. Today on the show, AI PAC influence over Trump administration.
A big topic today.
Definitely. You know, living here in Maine, sometimes it feels like decisions get made way above our heads, doesn't it? Things happen that just, they don't always seem to line up with what folks around here need or want.
Right, like you're watching a movie where someone else has the script.
Exactly. And today we're diving into a story that suggests maybe some of those scriptwriters are pretty powerful players. Specifically, we're looking at the American Israel Public Affairs Committee, AIPAC, and claims of its, significant influence over the Trump administration.
Yeah, and we've got some interesting sources for this. There's leaked audio, apparently from AIPAC's CEO himself.
Right, plus news articles analyzing that audio, reactions, and then other reports looking at Trump administration policies and, importantly, the promises made to voters.
So the mission today, really, is to unpack these claims about AIPAC's access and influence. What's being said? How are people reacting?
And critically, what does it potentially mean, especially when you think about promises made versus maybe promises kept or not kept, particularly regarding that core base of support?
Okay, so let's start with the leaked audio itself. This is apparently AIPAC's CEO, Elliot Brandt. What's the core claim coming out of that, according to the reporting?
Well, the reports from places like Pravda.en, the Free Thought Project, even the Jimmy Dore Show transcript, they all point to Brandt pretty much boasting, not just hinting, but boasting about having special access to the Trump administration.
Special access. That's a bold claim. Does he get specific?
Oh, yeah. Very specific. He apparently names names, implying AIPAC had a hand in getting certain people into key national security roles. We're talking Secretary of State.
Okay.
Marco Rubio is the name mentioned there. National Security Director Mike Waltz. And even the initial pick for UN Ambassador Elise Stefanik, though her nomination was later withdrawn.
Wow. So Secretary of State, National Security Director, UN Ambassador, those aren't exactly low-level positions, are they?
Not at all. These are the people shaping foreign policy, advising the president directly on security. It's like claiming you gotta pick the lead actors and the director for a blockbuster movie.
So how does he say this influence worked? Did he just, make a phone call?
According to the reports, Brandt points to their backgrounds. He says Rubio, Waltz, Stefanik, they all served in Congress before.
Okay, so they had existing political careers.
Right. And during that time, they apparently developed relationships with, quote, key AIPAC leaders from their communities.
Ah, so the connection was already there.
That seems to be the implication. He suggests this ensures good lines of communication and, crucially, access if AIPAC needed it. He even reportedly calls these connections lifelines.
Lifelines. That's a strong word. It implies something more than just, standard lobbying or constituent meetings. It sounds almost indispensable.
It does. It suggests a level of reliance, maybe, or at least a very, very direct line. He also apparently mentioned a relationship with John Ratcliffe, meeting him early in his congressional run, and Ratcliffe later became CIA director.
So laying groundwork early on, potentially.
Seems like it. Now, this audio, according to the Gray Zone, was obtained at the 2025 AIPAC Congressional Summit. And they reported something interesting about the atmosphere there.
Oh, what was that?
Apparently, there was a lot of anxiety. Attendees were reportedly told to keep a low profile, even hide their conference badges when they were outside the venue.
That seems counterintuitive, right? If you're boasting internally about your influence, why the secrecy externally?
Good question. It suggests maybe an awareness that these claims of significant influence might not play well with the general public. Raises questions about transparency, definitely.
And it wasn't just Brandt speaking there, right? Didn't Dana Stroll, a former Biden DOD official, also speak?
Yes, she did. And her message was reportedly focused on defending Israel's strategic imperatives, kind of downplaying the Gaza conflict as primarily Hamas's fault.
Which highlights another point often made, and something the Jimmy Dore Show discussed too. AIPAC's influence isn't just confined to one party, is it?
No, it seems very much bipartisan. They cultivate relationships across the aisle.
And it's interesting, the Jimmy Dore Show transcript mentions that AIPAC reportedly spends less on direct lobbying, registered lobbying, than countries like Japan or China.
Yet the perception is that their influence is immense.
Exactly, which suggests their power might come from other avenues, these long-term relationships, maybe shaping narratives, and, of course, campaign finance.
Ah, yes, the money. That definitely came up. The Jimmy Dore Show transcript specifically mentions a reported $100 million contribution to Trump.
Wow. $100 million, if accurate, that.
Cool.
Well, that changes the conversation from just access or lifelines, doesn't it?
It certainly puts a different spin on it. Suddenly, lifeline sounds a bit more like a financial transaction. Or at least it raises the question, is the policy alignment purely ideological, or is there a significant financial incentive driving it?
It's the kind of figure that makes you sit up and take notice, for sure, especially when you connect it back to the idea of betrayal.
Betrayal, how so?
Well, think about Trump's base. That GWOMPDN.com article talked about frustration among MAGA supporters. They felt Trump promised vengeance against his enemies, promised big changes, but didn't always deliver on that specific front.
Right, a sense of promises made, but actions not quite matching up.
Exactly. And then look at the foreign policy aspect. The Jimmy Dore Show discussion suggested that many in the MAGA base aren't actually thrilled about the amount of U.S. aid going to Israel or the U.S. stance on the Gaza conflict. They might be more isolationist, more America first in that sense.
So you have a potential conflict there. A leader whose base might lean one way on foreign intervention.
But who appears to align very strongly with AIPAC's agenda, possibly influenced by, well, factors like that reported $100 million. It leads to that feeling of, wait, whose interests are actually being served here?
And you even see figures within the MAGA movement, like Marjorie Taylor Greene, sometimes voicing criticism of certain pro-Israel actions. The suggestion made in the Dore transcript was maybe that's because she doesn't take AIPAC money.
Which again underlines the potential link between funding and policy positions. It raises that uncomfortable question. Are politicians representing their constituents, or are they representing their donors? It feels a bit like, promising everyone a slice of pizza, but then giving the whole pie to the guy who paid for the oven.
That's a good analogy. And this feeling of, let's call it a disconnect, isn't just about foreign policy, is it? Other sources point to similar patterns domestically.
Right. Senator Rosen's article, for instance, brings up Trump's promise to lower costs for Americans.
A classic campaign promise.
But then points to policies like tariffs, which economists often project will actually increase costs for families.
So, promise low costs, deliver policies that might do the opposite.
And the National Urban League statement highlights something similar with social programs. They point to Trump's proposed budget having, quote, the deepest cut to Medicaid in history, plus cuts to nutritional assistance.
Which seems at odds with the rhetoric often aimed at supporting working-class Americans, the supposed core of his base.
Precisely. And both Rosen and the National Urban League suggest that the primary beneficiaries of these overall economic policies tend to be the ultra-wealthy and large corporations, not necessarily the average citizen who was promised relief.
It paints a picture, doesn't it? A pattern, perhaps, of saying one thing to the crowd while the actual policies seem to benefit a different group entirely. It's like promising to drain the swamp, but then installing gold-plated faucets for the alligators.
It definitely raises fundamental questions about political promises, influence, and who really benefits at the end of the day. If this level of influence is being potentially wielded in foreign policy, as the leaked audio suggests,
It's not a huge leap to wonder about similar dynamics playing out across the board domestically, too.
absolutely. So to sort of wrap up the core points, we have this leaked audio suggesting really significant AIPAC access and influence within the Trump administration, naming names for top security posts.
Which immediately brings up questions about whose interests are driving U.S. foreign policy, especially when you factor in things like that alleged $100 million figure.
And this happens against a backdrop where parts of Trump's own base might not align with that specific foreign policy direction, leading to this potential feeling of, well, betrayal or disconnect.
A feeling perhaps echoed in some domestic policy areas, too, where promises made to working families seem to contrast with policies that might benefit the wealthy more.
It really makes you think about the nature of political influence, doesn't it? How much is driven by voters and how much by organized, well-funded groups operating behind the scenes?
So here's a thought to leave with everyone listening, especially here in Maine. Given these kinds of dynamics, this alleged level of influence playing out on the national stage, how might similar pressures, similar kinds of access and influence be shaping the decisions that affect our communities right here? What's happening behind the curtain locally?
It's a critical question. How do we, as citizens, evaluate the information we get and understand the real forces shaping the policies that impact our daily lives?
Thanks for tuning into the Despicable Maine Deep Dive podcast. Remember, because of this level of despicable, living in the state of Maine is theft of your life.